Good evening, SFL Nation. I am commissioner and play-by-play commentator for the SFL, Cameron Irvine, joined alongside my, seems like long-time SFL Today colleague and analyst, also a play-by-play commentator, owner of the Vancouver Legion, Andy Hamilton. Almost called you Vandy.
Vandy Hamilton.
On the call with us. How you doing, Andy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. How was the stress of not having to watch your team win or lose today?
It's not so bad. It's not so bad. I'm actually more nervous though for tomorrow than I would be had I been playing today at some point. So, I hope that doesn't carry over into my broadcast.
That's very true. Yeah, you've got the call tonight along with Sham Varner from Mexico City, the Dallas Roughnecks, and the Mexico City Aztecs, and we'll get to a brief preview of that game here in a moment. But we start on today's show, obviously, as we do every week, with breakdowns from the 5 games that happened this afternoon. And this week, we start in Cleveland, where the Cleveland Stallions took on the Chicago Wildcats. And Andy, there was a league record that happened in this game. Almost over 550 games played in SFL history, and this has never happened. Do you know what that record was?
No, I have no idea. You're actually scaring me a little bit here.
Well, here's the record as you see the final score. Cleveland had 3 special teams touchdowns today, 1 Akoma Kaleka kickoff return for a score, and 2 fumble recoveries on kickoffs return for touchdowns in a loss for Cleveland today, 56-48.
Jeez. Come on. That's insane.
I mean, can you believe that? Just an incredible, wild, wacky game for Colin and Rick Northrup to call. And there's so much to get to here. But once again, Cleveland loses another shootout. They've been in these games time and time again, it seems like, this season. And it's really hurting Cleveland's chances at the playoffs. Now 3-5. They've lost 59-44 to Baltimore, 56-48 to Chicago, and 62-31 to Atlanta. They've got to turn it around on that side of the ball.
Yeah, it seems to me, Cam, like, we're looking at a team that really is struggling defensively, because if they could just stop half of these passes, and touchdowns against them, they would be able to have quite a closer game.
Yeah, what's crazy about this game is that Cleveland scored 14 points in the first, 8 seconds of the game. It was out of control, but Chicago eventually got their offense going. Look at these numbers. E.T. King, 492 yards and 6 touchdowns, which is fantastic on its own, right? But E.T. King only threw 25 passes. He averaged almost 20 yards an attempt. And
wow.
That's insane. I've never seen an SFL quarterback with that high of an average. And when you look at his numbers through the first 7 weeks of the season, E.T. King's yards per attempt were 5th in the league at 8.6. So this guy's going to sling it around and throw the rock.
Yeah. I mean, an incredible, effort from him. But in reality, Deion Hawkins did a lot on the ground for Chicago, as well as, their defense did a good effort of slowing down Cleveland, considering how many points they put up in the first quarter.
Aaron King, 247 yards and 4 touchdowns on just 6 grabs. Prince Escobar also had over 200 yards receiving and a few scores, but that wasn't even good enough to make the list of notables here.
Jeez.
And honestly, Andy, what jumps out to me when you look at the box score is both teams had 4 turnovers, but Chicago capitalized and Cleveland did not.
That's basically what it comes down to, is that Chicago and Cleveland both, Cleveland started out hot, Chicago started out hot. After they kind of got over those opening jitters, and Chicago just kind of ran away with it at the end.
Well, and actually, funny enough, it looks like All-Pro does not keep track of points off turnovers if the play that was a turnover resulted in points. Because, obviously, Cleveland scored at least 14 points off turnovers because they ran two fumbles back for touchdowns. So bizarre kind of bonkerish stat there from All Pro. All Pro gonna All Pro, right, Andy?
Yeah, as always, the AI just kind of has a mind of its own sometimes.
Yeah, I turned Andy down, guys. You know, Andy typically likes to steal the show whenever he has an opportunity. So, um, don't leave me hanging. It makes me sound
Oh,
awful.
I'm not Eric now. Come on.
Oh my God. Sorry, Eric. That's only supposed to be for Thursday meetings. Anyway, Chicago improves to 5-3. Cleveland goes to 3-5. And once we wrap up SFL today here, Andy, we'll see why that is a big deal. All right, headed now to Baltimore, where we get to do a little announcing hazing. 24,
Hey,
24-16, we love announcer hazing. 24-16 with a minute to go. It's a one-possession game. Carolina gets the ball back, and the entire possession, James Richards and Michael Torillo have decided that they are moving on. They are moving on to Week 9. Pack your things. We're leaving Old Bay Stadium. As time expires, Johnny English takes like a little counter play. The clock runs out. It's 24-22, and they're out of the building. It's over.
yeah, the simple math, I guess, is sometimes the hardest math. They don't do the math correctly. They think they're down by 9, and in reality, they're only down by 8. And then, let's talk about the play call, Cam. First of all, the nuts from the Carolina offensive coordinating staff with 10 seconds left and only one timeout, handed to Johnny English off the right side. When in theory, at midfield, you probably should be throwing that ball somewhere.
Right.
And then English has the cojones to run it all the way down the field on his own and make something out of it. I mean, the whole thing was bonkers, and then it doesn't help that, they're thinking that it doesn't even matter. Then they go to the 2-point conversion, and English gets stuffed. So English can't gain 2 yards when on the play before he gained 55 for a touchdown.
Yeah. Now we've got Torillo in the chat blaming James wholeheartedly for the whole thing. So that's awesome. But either way, Carolina, in all seriousness, loses a heartbreaker. They handed it off to their backup running back for the 2-point tie because Johnny English was tired. And obviously, you would have liked to have had Johnny English on the field, considering that Carolina only had 82 rushing yards in this game. I mean, they got more than half just on that final run from Johnny English. And you can see the stats on the screen. Carolina had over 200 yards more passing than Baltimore in defeat. So Carolina, another tough loss. They lost to the Crabs earlier this season in overtime. And Carolina now at 1-7, St. Louis at 0-8. We'll have to take a look at tiebreaker scenarios and things because both of these teams could have played themselves out of the mix this week.
Yeah, that's for sure. But still, a good game played by both as Carolina tried to get back into this one later.
So I'm still adjusting Andy's volume. I'm really not.
I pulled it down on my end, Cam. I was getting tired of getting hazed in the chat on my own.
I mean, our volumes on my end appear to be relatively the same now. So hopefully, hopefully everybody will calm down about that and we can move on. But obviously, thank you to you guys letting us know of the issues. So Baltimore moves to 5-3. Chicago moves to 5-3. The top of that Eastern Conference is now getting very tight and very talented. To South Dakota now, the Sioux Falls Sparrows have had an interesting season. Every time they've lost a game, they started with the season with a loss in week 1. They have won the next game. One loss, or loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. So they're ready for a victory this week, right, Andy? Well, that's exactly what we saw. And at the end of the third quarter, it was a 20-14 ball game. But Sioux Falls turned it on in the fourth, outscored San Antonio 20-0 in the fourth quarter, pulled away from the Vaqueros. No Hail Mary necessary to beat Vancouver this week. San Antonio this week, 40-14. Sioux Falls gets the victory and bounces back to 4-4. Julian Tyree, very efficient day, 21 of 31, 304 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Jalen Miller, Ajumu Afalabi also had good games. What stands out to you, Andy, from this contest?
Obviously, Afalabi playing an incredible game. But, when I look over this, I like how Sioux Falls stayed clean on the turnover chart. Sometimes when you're high in the points totals, around 30 or 40, you throw the backups in, and every once in a while they'll throw an interception or something. So good to see that Sioux Falls was staying turnover free, as well as converting off of the turnovers from San Antonio. 10 points off 2 turnovers is not bad. And that they just held the ball for more time, 25 minutes of possession versus 18. Number of times once you have the ball longer than the other team, you're going to win that game. And luckily for Sioux Falls, they did, and that really keeps them alive in the conversation right there with Dallas and Vancouver in the Western Conference.
Yeah, Sioux Falls essentially dominates. Next week they will go to Oklahoma City to take on the Renegades, who we'll be talking about here in a little while, as Sioux Falls tries to start a win streak for the first time this season. It'll be the first of 2 straight games on the road, at Oklahoma City, at Vancouver, before Sioux Falls ends the season with 2 games at home versus Alaska and versus Dallas. Those are going to be 2 monstrous games for Sioux Falls down the stretch.
That could get dangerous.
From South Dakota, from birds to the bees, the Atlanta Swarm hosted the St. Louis Gladiators. That's what started the day here on the SFL Network on YouTube. St. Louis played Atlanta close the first meeting and played them close in the second meeting. But like Sioux Falls today, Atlanta pulls ahead in the fourth quarter. Aquantis Shine with a big pick 6 late in this contest. And again, St. Louis's offense just not enough in the tank down the stretch. 26-10, Arizona. Atlanta beats St. Louis by 16 points. Hollywood with 159 yards and a crucial touchdown that got Atlanta's offense clicking in the second half. Fennell had 140 all-purpose yards and Aquantis Shine, as you can see there, that pick 6 and 13 tackles. So a good game for him. What stands out to you with Atlanta's 6th victory?
I think the scoreboard doesn't show the tail of this game. I was watching it. It looked to me like St. Louis was real close in this one. That interception touchdown by Shine was really the only thing that kind of separated these 2 teams near the end there. I believe it was 10-16 when St. Louis was driving, trying to put points on the board and win. So hats off to the whole organization in St. Louis, but Atlanta gets it done when they need to. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't a blowout like, some people thought, but they get the job done and they're able to pick up the win. I'd like to see them stay a little bit cleaner on that turnover chart. I hate to harp on the same thing again, Cam, but only 2 turnovers for both teams is kind of leaves you evenly matched. And that's, I think, where Atlanta kind of struggled at times was, when they're turning the ball over just as many times as the opponent. That's not a good positive there, especially with that last interception kind of being the end of the game. If it weren't for that one, you would have been down in the turnover ratio. And then on St. Louis's side, those 64 rush yards with a guy like Fennell kind of being the only real offense you had, you got to find a way to get him more yardage, whether it's through the passing game or on the ground. And they did that a little bit with 140 all-purpose yards, but I would have liked to see them run a little bit more, especially because once you break past that defensive line for Atlanta, you could really get going.
Here is one of the craziest stats that I've ever seen in league history, and it's something that I just can't put my finger on. Andy, if I were to ask you who leads the league in turnover differential, what would your guess be?
Oh man, that's tough. It's got to be a quarterback, Cam. I don't think there's any way that it's any other type of player.
Well, no, I mean teams. Which
teams? Teams. Currently. Okay. Here we go. I would say, honestly, it's got to be Dallas. They throw the ball so much.
Carolina is +9 in turnover differential.
Wow.
And they're 1-7.
Man, that's incredible.
how is that even possible? I mean, that's just when you feel for Carolina. They lost to Baltimore by 2, Queen City by 9, Tallahassee by 11, Baltimore by 3, Atlanta by 6. They've been in a lot of games this year. It's disappointing to see that. St. Louis at 0-8 because there's 4 teams in the East now with at least 5 wins. They were definitely eliminated this week. So St. Louis 2 seasons, 2 trips to the couch for the postseason. So we'll see how they can turn it around in their 3rd season. Final game before Sunday Night Football gets underway. We head to Oklahoma City. Obviously, the Houston Hyenas playing with a bit of a heavy heart today. They got out of Houston before the storm. They traveled up to Oklahoma City before it blew into town. And the Hyenas, in a back-and-forth battle with Oklahoma City, at one point held a 24-17 advantage, a 31-24 advantage. But how about the Renegades today? They pull it out, a clutch Tiberius Bovine touchdown late, tied the game at 31. Defense gets a stop. Renegades got down the field for a game-winning field goal, and Oklahoma City snaps a 5-game losing streak and sends Houston to their 3rd straight loss, a 34-31 win for OKC.
Yeah, an incredible game by the Renegades to get back on track after, I personally, I was one of who was kind of doubting what they were doing after the way that they'd played so far through, after the first 2 weeks. They just struggled so much. And so a great job by them to get off of that, kind of horse. And even more amazingly, Cam, they did it with only 56 rushing yards from Pete Bruschi. The Goldback only had 56 yards on the ground. And circle that turnover margin again. 2 for Oklahoma City, 3 for Houston. The nod goes to Oklahoma City, so does the win total. The surprising part, though, is the points off the turnover. Only 7 for the Renegades and 14 for Houston. So they got touchdowns on both of their turnovers, but Oklahoma City able to pull it out, despite William Choice putting on a monster performance.
Yeah, Choice had a really good game. Oklahoma City is really struggling lately defending the run. They've slipped all the way to 136.1 given up, which is 10th in the league, or 9th in the league, rather. They're going to fall faster than that after giving up $172. Another interesting thing of this game is that Houston's average field position was really good and still could not get the victory as the Renegades get up to almost 400 yards of total offense. Caleb Hamby and Ethan Hamby had really nice days for OKC, who improves to 3-5. They will have Sioux Falls at 4-4 next week. Andy, it doesn't get much better or bigger than that.
No, not at all.
So coming up, the Dallas Roughnecks and the Mexico City Aztecs here on the SFL Network on YouTube. We are going to provide that link to you in the chat just so we can get you over there. Andy, you are calling the game along with Shan Varner. Dallas had Mexico City's number last season. They went into Mexico City, won a very close game. Then in the Western Conference Final, able to squeak out another very close game, 24-17. What do you see as the keys to tonight's game and how this one is going to play out?
Well, I think, both teams have got to throw the ball well. Dallas is pretty much a throwing team, and Mexico City has Ray Bentley, on the ground. So if Mexico City can find a way to throw the ball well and stay away from LaShaw and Jace Jefferson, as well as utilize Bentley to somewhat of his full potential, Mexico City obviously the favorite. But, if Dallas can hit those right throws at the right times from Shabazz Synergy, who knows, man? This thing could get high scoring and it could get crazy.
All right, well, for Andy Hamilton, he's going to jump on the call from Estadio Azteca. Should be a fun game. Should be a fun game tonight. Shan is joining you, and we're going to pop off the air. Thanks again, Andy, for contributing to the show.
Yep, can't wait to see you all over at the next one.
All righty, everybody, for our entire SFL Network crew. This has been a presentation of the Simulation Football League and the SFL Network. Hats off to SFL Nation. The SFL YouTube channel has crossed 100,000 channel views. We appreciate all your support every single day, every single week, every single season. This has been the SFL Today, our final game of the day. The biggest game of the day, Mexico City and Dallas, is next.